Hi, my name is Lori Thicke. I'm a certified translator, French-English, and a member of the STIBC. And I'm also the founder of Translators Without Borders, which is a nonprofit dedicated to spreading the word about why translation is important, to supporting other nonprofits with translation services, and helping increase access to knowledge through translation. And I'm here today to thank you very much for this award. I'm thrilled. I am absolutely thrilled to win this award. And I'm just sorry I couldn't be here today. But I could be here to tell you by video a little bit about the work of Translators Without Borders and why I think it is important that we spread the word. The language matters. I went to university in British Columbia and moved to France just afterwards to write the great Canadian novel. Instead, I used my language skills to open a translation company. And all this time I meant to do volunteer work, and I just never got around to it. I was busy, always busy with something, with my company. Before that, I was busy with university. Then one day, Doctors Without Borders, or Médecins Sans Frontières, as they're known, which is a neighbor, still today, of my translation company, L'Accélera in Paris. So they came to my company and said, could you give us a quote for a project? And I thought of all those times that I meant to volunteer and I just hadn't had the time. And I said, well, if we give you this job for free, could you use the money you saved to help more people? And they said, yes, we could. And they are a very lean, very good organization. And that was how Traducteurs Sans Frontières was born. That was in 1993. For 17 years, I hope my math is okay. I am a linguist, not a mathematician. For something like 17 years, Traducteurs Sans Frontières worked for nonprofits like Médecins Sans Frontières, Secours Catholique, Action Against Hunger, Action Contre la Faim, and other nonprofits helping them with free translations that were provided by donors working around the world, translators who would work all day as professional translators, and then at the end of the night, the end of the day, they would spend the evening translating for Translators Without Borders, or at that time, as it was known, Traducteurs Sans Frontières. Then in 2010, the earthquake hit Haiti, and we were inundated with requests, first of all, from Doctors Without Borders because they were there, from Action Against Hunger because they were there, and we just couldn't keep up. So that made me realize that there was so much need for humanitarian translations and so much desire because 1,000 translators a week were volunteering. Well, as you can imagine, it's pretty hard to input and test and get working that many translators. So I realized we totally needed to scale. I approached pros.com and asked if they could help us scale up. I approached some of the leaders in the translation industry and asked them to be on my board of directors. And we founded Translators Without Borders in 2010, which is today the world's largest humanitarian translation community. We have over 3,000 translators, we help over 400 nonprofits, and as of today, you can check on the website, but we've donated since 2010 almost 28 million words. But that's not the only work we do that I think is really important. Donating that many words has saved so much money that nonprofits can use to help more people. It also makes content available that nonprofits wouldn't have money to translate. That is all super important. But it's also important, I think, that we work with nonprofits and we raise awareness that not everybody in the world speaks English, and that translation really, really, really matters. And I find today we still have a big battle, all of us, to fight, to raise awareness of translation and why it's important. Just to give you an example, when the typhoon was heading towards the Philippines, Typhoon Haiyan. We all knew it was coming. Well, the warnings in the Philippines went out in English, as reported by Doctors Without Borders. It went out in English warning people that there was a storm surge. Well, the educated elite knew what a storm surge was, and they got away from the coast. They left those areas. But the poor, the most vulnerable, were the ones least likely to speak English, least likely to understand what a storm surge was. And those were the ones who perished in their homes. With Ebola, years later, we saw the same thing happening. We saw absolutely wonderful nonprofits going in there without the language awareness and thinking that English would be a perfectly appropriate language to ask people to change deeply ingrained cultural habits, like not washing their dead, not helping a sick child or sick relatives. We were thinking that English was an appropriate language to raise those kinds of important messages so that people would stop the spread of Ebola. And as we know, that didn't happen. It wasn't until about midpoint in the Ebola epidemic that we felt we were able to get some traction and really get that message through. We translated ourselves posters into some of the local languages, into Creole and Temne. We translated into Hausa for Nigeria. So we helped not only raise awareness that when you want to change people's behavior, you need to speak to them in their language, not yours. So we not only raised awareness about that, but we also made content available so that people would understand what they needed to do to stop the spread. Most recently, we've been working to raise awareness, and I think we're having a little more success now, with the refugee crisis in Europe. It started actually with Haiyan, where the United Nations activated, that's the term, they activated Translators Without Borders to actually go and translate messages. This was after the crisis, unfortunately. So since Haiyan, the United Nations has activated Translators Without Borders for virtually every conflict, including the earthquake in Nepal, so that we could help them translate the messages to the people and also hear back from the people when they needed help. That's super important. For example, during Super Typhoon Haiyan, there were messages in Tagalog and Cebuano and Wari-Wari, because that's the languages spoken in the areas that were hit. Those messages would have been thrown out, frankly, by the international search and rescue teams because they couldn't understand them. So we were able to translate those messages so that people could be rescued. We did the same work during the Nepal earthquake. And now in Europe is work I'm really proud of, because the refugees who are coming from Syria, and not only Syria, from Ethiopia, from Somalia, they're coming from many different places. They're arriving on the shores, mostly of the island of Lesbos. That's a very, very popular destination. And they don't speak the language. They don't speak Greek, they don't speak English, and they need to know what to do. They need to know how to find shelter, where they can get some food and water, how to take care of their children. So Translators Without Borders is working with them, is working with the refugee organizations and helping them get the message through to refugees, how to keep themselves straight and how to find a better life. So I just want to thank you so much, all the members, the board of directors of the STIBC. Thank you so much for recognizing this work, and thank you for your support and helping raise the awareness that language matters. Thank you very much.